Let's cross over to Europe to learn a thing or two. Now, for the first time in post-war German history, Chancellor Angela Merkel submitted herself to questions from the country's members of parliament. This is quite unusual in the UK parliament, from which Ghana takes a lot of inspiration. In Germany, however, it is unusual. So the question is, why, and are there any lessons there for parliaments in our parts of the world to learn? As usual, Thomas Sparrow has been explaining things to my colleague, Mamavi Owusu-Aboagye.
Why has the German parliament decided to do this?
Essentially because they want to make debates in the German parliament much more lively. They want to make sure that the key debates in Germany are held precisely there in the German parliament and not necessarily elsewhere, for example, on television shows. And that's why the different members of the German parliament had proposed to try and reform some of the structures of the German parliament and make sure that the Chancellor herself actually went to the parliament and accepted and responded to open questions by the MPs. What normally happens when the German Chancellor is at the German parliament is that she gives a speech, and then the other parties also give speeches, but the possibility for debate is rather limited. There are obviously other question and answer sessions, but those question and answer sessions often are planned and pre-structured and are normally held by state ministers or other politicians of that level, but not necessarily the Chancellor herself. But in this case, the new coalition in Germany agreed in the coalition agreement that they wanted to make this option available. So now the Chancellor herself will be 3 times a year at the German parliament answering direct questions from MPs from all other different parties, and the different MPs can obviously choose the topic that they want to ask. It's an open session. In other words, it's not the case that the government pre-gives a topic and then they have to ask questions on that topic. Essentially, MPs can ask whatever they want, and the Chancellor, also unplanned, also without any script, has to answer them as well. The goal, again, is to make sure that the Bundestag reflects the variety of opinions in Germany, and that those questions that are important to Germans around the country are also discussed directly with the Chancellor and the MPs in the German parliament.
So, Thomas, this is usual in the UK Parliament, from where Ghana takes its inspiration, even though we don't do that here in Ghana. The first appearance, how would you say the first appearance went?
Well, Angela Merkel is not necessarily a chancellor known for her spontaneous style or anything like that, but she's also a chancellor that has been a long time in the chancellery, more than 12 years now, and as such she clearly knows and understands how the government works, and that was obviously clearly evident today when she was answering questions not only on the key, most controversial issues where they were talking, for example, of migration or European policies, but also when they asked her about other aspects here. At the same time, it was obviously clear that the other MPs, that the MPs from some of the opposition parties, for example, the Alternative for Germany, they wanted to make sure that they could pose uncomfortable questions. Now, obviously, the session has already finished and there were plenty of questions, plenty of topics. It was not a show in any way, as many people describe how it develops in the United Kingdom. It was very matter of fact, question, answer, obviously 1 minute or so in each case, and it had a wide variety of topics. So you could clearly say that Angela Merkel, although she's not necessarily comfortable in that position, she still managed to address the questions by the German MPs.
Did some MPs disagree with her answers to some of the questions posed?
But of course they disagreed, and that was obviously part of the process. It was not necessarily only friendly questions. It was clear that there were questions coming from different parts of the German Bundestag, from different parties within the German parliament. One particular topic, for example, that was discussed and where there are lots of disagreements now is migration. Migration is again a very controversial topic here in Germany because of a scandal within the Office for Migration and Refugees, known here in Germany as BAMF, because it has been alleged that one of the branches of that office approved many asylum applications without considering each case accordingly and properly. And this has become a very big scandal, and many MPs wanted to find out directly from the German Chancellor what she knew, what she didn't know, what her stance is on this, how she plans to resolve the situation, the scandal. So this was obviously one of the very big topics today during that Q&A session. Another very big topic, Donald Trump and Donald Trump's disagreements with Germany and with Europe in particular, because Angela Merkel, in her introduction that she gave, that introduction was on the upcoming G7 summit. And in that upcoming G7 summit, one of the main topics will certainly be the disagreements between Donald Trump and the other European partners when it comes to, for example, Iran, or when it comes to trade, or when it comes to defense. Those are all issues that were very much debated today in the German parliament.
I want to believe that this is something that is also getting citizens talking. First of all, what's the conversation that people are having around the fact that their chancellor had to face parliament the way that she did today?
Well, I think most people will obviously welcome the possibility that Angela Merkel can address the questions directly. Again, Angela Merkel has been described by other politicians as being sometimes rather vague or being non-committal. And that is something that they wanted to change as well with this particular format in the German Bundestag, making sure that Angela Merkel did not remain vague, making sure that the questions that were posed by the MPs could also be addressed directly by the German Chancellor. There are obviously different ways of doing so, but I think in a way what many people in Germany had previously said, for example, last year during the election campaign, was that they wanted the German politicians, irrespective of the different parties, but obviously in particular the parties in government, the coalition parties, to make sure that they could address directly the issues that they feel important in different parts of Germany. And obviously the MPs, which represent different parts of Germany as well, try to make sure that those issues that are normally addressed in the different cities and towns in Germany could be posed directly to the German Chancellor. So without knowing specific statistics or specific polls, I would assume that many Germans are comfortable and are happy with the idea that the German Chancellor goes 3 times a year to the German Parliament, not only to give a speech, but also to answer direct questions.
Finally, Thomas, this is her first appearance in June. So when is she expected back in Parliament?
That is still not decided. That's something that the coalition parties and different parties have to address and discuss. As you can imagine, obviously the German Chancellor has a very tight agenda. Her next big event, as I mentioned, will be the G7. Then there's obviously other upcoming trips and topics that she has to address. But it is agreed in the German coalition agreement that this will happen 3 times a year. When exactly, that isn't mentioned in the coalition agreement. It is only mentioned that it will happen 3 times a year.
And that was Mama V.O. Boaji speaking with DW's Thomas Spar, explaining why Angela Merkel had to take questions from members of Parliament. But that's how we wrap up the Pulse this afternoon. Why don't you log on to My Joy Online for more? My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Another exciting edition of The Pulse awaits you same time tomorrow on the JoyNews channel. Right now, Doreen Aviu comes up with Let's Talk Entertainment. To enjoy the rest of our programs.